Success stories, particularly in Hollywood, don't always end happily ever after. Despite having compelling rags to riches stories of how they rose from humble origins, some of the brightest stars eventually go astray. A number of well-known celebrities have, surprise, found themselves without a home, whether as a result of addiction, mental health issues, or bad financial choices. Tragic endings befall some, while others are able to change their lives for the better. To discover out which famous people became homeless after losing everything, watch the video all the way to the end. Kareena Kapoor. Margot Kidder was a Hollywood sensation who played Lois Lane in Christopher Reeve's Superman flicks. Richard Pryor and Pierre Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, were among the famous people she dated. She was discovered walking the streets, suffering from manic depression, which shocked many. In Los Angeles, she slept in backyards and cardboard boxes. She appeared more than untidy, according to many. She had her hair chopped off and her front teeth were gone. Following a manic episode in 1996, her family and the police discovered her living out of a box under bushes in Glendale, California, during her homeless phase. She would approach strangers and politely request a smoke when she was living on the streets. Also, she spent the night in a motel thanks to some kind souls. She was eventually admitted to a private mental health facility and began to show signs of improvement during treatment. We are all just a breath away from mental illness, homelessness, and all these things that we tend to overlook, and she went on to become an advocate for mental health support. Meg Moran. By the time Moran was 14 years old, her name had spread throughout many homes. Happy Days' Joni Cunningham was the breakout role for the young actress. However, she carelessly spent all her fortune in her later years, leaving her devastated and homeless. In 2010, she allegedly foreclosed on her property in California after spending all her money. The couple ended up moving in with her husband's mom in an Indiana trailer after she became too old to live alone. Unfortunately, this did not endure long as she was evicted from her house in the Indiana trailer park after an argument with her mother-in-law following a night of drinking. After this, she was homeless and living in a series of motels, and she was about to divorce her husband. Near an inn, she was seen looking much worse for wear after being ejected out. She overdosed on heroin and eventually died, broke and homeless. Plato, Dana. Different strokes. Dana Plato had a troubled upbringing like many child actors. She battled homelessness when the program finished and tragically died of a heroin overdose not long after. Plato was already abusing drugs behind the scenes when she featured on the popular sitcom at the tender age of 14. She hit rock bottom by the show's finale, when she was embroiled in multiple controversies and battling substance misuse. Forging a prescription in 1992 and stealing a video store the year before were among her legal issues. She was enrolled in drug rehabilitation programs and served time in prison in the end. Plato, who was homeless in 1999, was discovered residing in Oklahoma motels. A few weeks subsequent to her sober confession, her body was found in a state of apparent drug overdose. Suicide was the final determination in her case. Her final appearance on television was on the Howard Stern show the day before she died of homelessness. Recognizing that I am a recovering alcoholic and drug user. Many callers criticized and questioned her, which may have driven her to her breaking point, despite her claims that she was sober. Wilson, Lonnie. Lonnie Wilson swiftly became famous for her successful modeling career. She used to have a home near Venice Beach, but now she's on the streets due to concerns including her mental illness and drug addiction. Wilson was a well-known fitness model who frequently appeared in publications. After marrying Baywatch actor Jeremy Jackson, she finally reached the peak of her career. However, she ended herself on the streets due to her struggles with mental illness and meth addiction. She famously said that she and her ex-husband Jackson had a violent relationship in which he attempted to strangle her, and she blamed him for her current problems. Additionally, she asserts that she is unable to reside indoors due to her aversion to electricity. She had endured daily electrocution for nearly a year. According to her, she is able to detect a wide range of chemicals, batteries, fuses, wire, and metals due to her heightened sensitivity to electricity. I suppose my body has a built-in filter for things like that. She may or may not be telling the truth. It could be an explanation for her meth addiction and her subsequent decline. Rapper MC Hammer. Hip-hop artist MC Hammer went from winning 3 Grammys to living on the streets. Parachute pieces, typewriter dancing techniques, and the phrase hammer time were some of the rapper's hallmarks in the 90s, when he ruled high school and college. He even made an appearance in the animated film Hammerman. A 40,000 square foot estate was just the beginning of MC Hammer's extravagant spending habits. He also spent $30 million on the restoration of 17 cars, 2 helicopters, a plane, and racehorses. But then the music industry moved on and he became less well known. He paid over 200 people to work for him and kept his mansion and other fancy stuff despite losing money. After exhausting all other options, he sold all of his assets and racked up $13 million in debt. He was additionally taxed to the tune of almost $800,000. He got well and eventually settled into a modest house, where he put his money to work by arranging concerts and saving and investing. Michael Vincent January. A combination of substance abuse, aggressive conduct, and sheer poor luck reduced Jan Michael Vincent, once Hollywood's heartthrob, to homelessness. His role in the hit TV show Airwolf made him famous. He maintained his fame, if briefly, thanks to his beach-ready physique and stereotypically American appearance. He began battling alcoholism and drug usage shortly after, problems that persisted throughout his life. Cocaine possession led to his arrests in 1977, 1978, and 1979. Bar brawls in 1984 and 1985 led to his detention as well. Arrest warrants were issued for him on charges of bodily assault, drunk driving, and felony assault. Vincent fractured numerous bones in a series of car accidents that he caused himself, in part due to his propensity of driving under the influence. He had to have his right leg amputated at some point. And he needed the assistance of a wheelchair or prosthetic limb to move around. He became homeless as a result of his substance usage and health problems. After a while, he went into solitude in rural North Carolina and Mississippi, and he didn't make it past the age of 74. Garrett, Leaf. After achieving fame as a teen idol, Leif Garrett fell into a life of heavy drug use and homelessness. He began abusing narcotics at the age of 14. He wrecked his mom's Porsche on the way to get cocaine right before he turned 18. His pal became paraplegic when he was found with a blood alcohol level 3 times higher than the legal limit. His problems with alcohol and strong drugs were many. With nothing more than his clothing, household items, and $350 in cash, Garrett also filed for personal bankruptcy in 2001. Without a home to call his own, he survived month to month on the $1,000 he received from his mother. The former teen idol had a history of drug-related arrests, including stays in prison and rehabilitation institutions. Leif Garrett is residing under a bridge, and he's reserving a spot for you, Justin Bieber, when Sharon Osbourne mentioned his celebrity homelessness. Michelle McCready. Country music artist Mindy McCready's life took a turn for the worst. She was well known once, but she lost everything and took her own life when she was 37 years old. The singer, who had a difficult time maintaining sobriety, was a mother of 2 before she was forced by a court to join a rehabilitation facility. Her lover had a gunshot wound to the head and was found dead. She shot herself in the arm and died a month later aboard the space station. The news that her children would be moved to live with her long-estranged mother appears to have been the final straw for her. She had shot her dog before killing herself, creating a horrific scene that the cops had to deal with. Her struggles with substance abuse, mental illness, and inner demons caused her family to disintegrate and contributed to her untimely demise. In a dramatic turn of events, former child star David Cassidy became homeless after developing an addiction to alcohol and drugs. With a history of addiction, children from previous relationships, and many marriages, his personal life was always complicated. His struggles gained notoriety following his 2010 DUI arrest. The former teen idol's battle with substance abuse became evident in 2013 and 2014, when he faced additional drunk driving charges. Being an alcoholic was something he openly acknowledged. By the show's conclusion, the star of The Partridge Family had become a homeless person. He had a highly troubled private life, with multiple arrests stemming from drug purchases and encounters with prostitutes. Ray Williams, Sugar. Only celebrities, such as athletes, singers, and actors, are allowed to fall from great heights. Former NBA great Sugar Ray Williams is one of these. In 2010, police saw him dozing off in his Buick. Williams captained the New York Knicks for more than 10 years and was a member of the 1985 NBA Finals team representing the Boston Celtics. Stories began circulating in 2010 that he had been using his Buick as a makeshift bed at Pompano Beach, Florida. He went on to say in an interview that he and other retired NBA players are only one of many that are underappreciated and in need of help. During an interview, he mentioned that team loyalty was a constant theme during his time playing the game. Where is the support and empathy for hurting former players? These guys' wages are through the top, yet we let them in nevertheless. Not only did he lose all of his off-court employment after retiring, but he was also compelled to declare bankruptcy. He didn't appear to be struggling with any kind of addiction, rather, he appeared to be experiencing a string of unfortunate events. In the end, colon cancer took his life in 2013. Danny Driscoll. Bobby Driscoll's performance in the 1950 film The Window was recognized with an Oscar. Perhaps the famous kid actor been in the spotlight before, but it was quite some time ago. He was convicted of drug use and given a prison sentence as a result of his addiction. Despite his release from prison, he continued to face challenges related to his drug addiction and financial situation. Although he had cameo appearances on several shows, they were all somewhat minor. His overdose left him destitute and homeless, and nobody ever came forward to claim his body. The Disney star had previously stated in an interview, "I became a beatnik and a bum. My parents' house was where my clothes were, but I didn't have a place to call my own. I was attempting to get my individuality back after it had taken a beating during my marriage." The actor's body was discovered in an abandoned building in Manhattan's East Village by two children. He had won an Academy Award, along with the suspicion that he resided there. On Hart Island in New York City, he was laid to rest in 1968 in an unmarked tomb. But reporters weren't looking into him until 1971 when word got out of his death. Barry, Iran's Blade. Famous boxer Iran Barkley went from having a net worth of $5 million to being homeless in the space of a second. The former boxing champion allegedly slept in subway cars and the Howard Johnson Express in 2010, according to the New York Post. As a boxer, Barkley earned almost $5 million in the 80s and 90s. Because of his careless spending and bad money management, he ended up losing all of his profits. He became bankrupt as a result of this and ended himself jobless and destitute. He eventually took to sleeping in motels and roughhousing it. He was initially housed by his niece in the Bronx's Patterson Houses, a public housing complex. He slept in subway cars till he ended up at Howard Johnson after she could no longer take him in. In due time, he was able to secure funding from the Ring 10 boxing charity and the Bronx Works organization. In addition to relocating and getting back on his feet, he began instructing amateur boxers. Beautiful Natasha Lyonne. In the 1990s, actress Natasha Lyonne was the talk of Hollywood thanks to her parts in American Pie, Slums of Beverly Hills, and But I'm a Cheerleader. However, multiple run-ins with the law halted her career. After losing her residence, she began to battle with substance abuse and finally became homeless. The streets became Lyonne's home in due time. She was evicted from her Gramercy Park condominium in 2001 after being caught for driving under the influence. Her methadone addiction, heart infection, hepatitis C, and collapsed lung were treated at Beth Israel Hospital by 2005. She has managed to get her life in order since then. Based on her life experiences, she created the Netflix series Russian Doll and acted in Orange is the New Black. She was also a standout on the investigative procedural Poker Face. Bonaduce Danny. Former child actor Danny Bonaduce became homeless as an adult after a lifetime of battles with substance abuse. His breakout role was in the hit TV series The Partridge Family. However, he eventually struggled to maintain sobriety and went in and out of treatment. He ended up without a house as an adult because of this. Substance misuse and drunkenness were his downfall. After being diagnosed with hydrocephalus, Bonaduce also had to battle with health difficulties. He made his home in his vehicle behind Hollywood's Grauman's Chinese Theater. Also, Bonaduce frequently would get out of the car to meet autograph hunters. Plus, he spoke about his peculiar time being both homeless and famous once. He mentioned that he was still popular and that nobody knew he lived behind a dumpster in an interview. "I would be the one to pose for photos and sign autographs." Remarried and back on the road, he now DJs the drive time on WSYP. He had to retire from radio in Seattle after a while because of his health problems and brain surgery. I am Houston McTeer. Houston McTeer's experience exemplifies how even Olympic stars face adversity. Not only did he tie the record, but he was also named the fastest human on Earth. He had a high school best of 9.0 seconds in the 100-meter dash. He then relocated to Los Angeles, where he trained under boxing greats Harold Smith and Muhammad Ali, having escaped poverty in Florida not long after. He made it onto the 1980 U.S. Olympic team and was featured on the 1978 Sports Illustrated cover. Nonetheless, he was unable to take part in the Olympics because the United States boycotted them. After that, he started doing drugs and spent 3 years of the 1980s on the streets. After the club's demise and his descent into drug use, McTeer slept on Santa Monica Beach for as long as 3 years before an elderly woman finally broke him. He admitted that he was never hungry because he frequently visited the Claire Foundation, a Santa Monica shelter for those experiencing homelessness. McTeer has recently gotten back on his feet and tied the knot with ex-Swedish sprinter Linda Haglund. This is Brett Butler. Brett Butler was once a leading lady and a Golden Globe nominee. But her struggles with substance abuse brought her to a homeless shelter. Grace Under Fire, an ABC comedy, was important in Butler's rise to fame. On the show, she struggled with a drug addiction that came back and went to rehab multiple times. Substance abuse was the root of her problems, but she eventually beat them. Leaving Los Angeles behind, she settled on a Georgia farm and raised a family of 15 pets. Her funds quickly dried up, and she spent a considerable amount of time in a homeless shelter. She has been trying to get her career back on track, as it was later revealed. While performing at a Los Angeles comedy club, she plans to create a reality show centered around her self-proclaimed clairvoyant skills. Mr. Ames, name, famed actor Willie Ames went homeless following a devastating financial collapse, despite his roles in Charles in Charge and 8 is Enough. In due time, he was evicted from his home, bank account, wife, and child. Under bushes and under parking garages, Ames lived. Even working as a wilderness guide was out of the question for him. He was living off the streets after losing over $1 million a year. He said, "At the very peak of 8 is Enough" in an interview. An annual salary of just over $1 million was mine. Suddenly, everything had vanished: a job, a bank account, a wife, and a child. I never imagined it could happen so quickly. Suddenly, I was on the verge of homelessness. When I could, I slept with friends, in parking garages, or even in parks. How disheartening. While lying beneath the bushes, I wondered, is this how it turns out? Will this be the ultimate outcome of my life? After getting well and completing the necessary training, he eventually returned to the workforce as a financial advisor. He went back to making movies and acting. He divides his time between the two cities. Rocky Flats. Rocky Lockridge became famous after his successful boxing career. He won the title of junior lightweight in 1992. But his career was cut short shortly after. Following his boxing career, he battled addiction and spent time homeless. After Lockridge's wife and children passed away, he lost all of his savings due to his crack addiction. His 27-month prison term for burglary was handed out in 1997. He became homeless shortly after his release from prison and lived on New Jersey streets for as long as 10 years. He was already leaning to one side from a stroke he had while out on the streets. Despite his affluence and knowledge, he endured physical and mental pain following retirement as a result of his substance abuse and physical abuse. In addition to his boxing-related injuries, he was an alcoholic and cocaine addict who partied every weekend. Equally responsible for his financial collapse was his careless spending. Michael Marvin Gaye. The world was enchanted by the profound and emotionally charged music of the great soul singer Marvin Gaye. Gaye was an innovator who molded the sound of Motown and beyond with songs like What's Going On, Sex Healing, and Let's Get It On, who have stood the test of time. Despite his musical prowess, he battled addiction, financial hardship, and intense familial strife. Substance misuse and difficult relationships, especially with his father, were hallmarks of Gaye's turbulent personal life. In spite of his struggles, he became an advocate for social reform and self-reflection through the power of his music to transmit honest feeling. In a tense disagreement the day before Gaye's 45th birthday, his father shot and killed him. His tragic passing stunned the globe, but his music has served as an inspiration to many. The author is Amanda Patterson. Along with Patrick Dempsey, Amanda Peterson became famous in 1987 for her role as Cindy Mancini in the romantic comedy Can't Buy Me Love. Her portrayal of the charismatic cheerleader catapulted her to stardom and adulation as a 1980s teen idol. But behind the scenes, Peterson battled serious issues related to substance misuse and mental health. Her early success was clouded by personal struggles, and she retired from public life and the entertainment world as her career declined. Industry admirers mourned the loss of Peterson's ability and promise after her tragic death from an accidental drug overdose on July 3, 2015, days before her 44th birthday.